we're here today to discuss something that Nick and I both really feel quite passionate about, which is if the cornerstone of clean language is listening, which it certainly seems to be. And I even noticed in the chat when we did our 6-word summary of clean language, there was so much about listening. If listening is the heart of the practice, just how being embodied has really helped. It's helped me use clean language. It's helped me be in a field where sometimes I don't even need to ask the question and things open up for my patients, which is really beautiful. It gives them a sense of empowerment and discovery and possibility that I was not witnessing in my typical practice. And Nick, do you have anything to add to that about your work?
Well, in a moment, we would like to get into the breakout rooms in a conversational way, just to check out with you, how do you know when you're being listened to? Just wanted to say we were hoping this would be more of a kind of conversation, not just us rushing through a bunch of exercises and breakout room practices. We really would like everyone to be able to contribute and share this idea of what happens when we bring clean together with embodiment. And or as Ronald was doing this morning, focusing in clean. I was really, really interested, Ronald, when you said in your pitch that you wouldn't use them separately anymore. Personally, I can't imagine using clean separately from my idea of embodiment these days. And really curious to know what that means to other people. And of course, you can be working with people who are, for reasons of trauma or whatever, their body is not a safe place to be. And it can be a lot of work, as you can read, you know, in like Bessel van der Kolk's book, a lot of work just to get a person breathing back into their body in a comfortable way. And we had the lovely drumming thing. I don't know how many of you were here this morning for that, my morning, where we all just shook ourselves out and got into some rhythms. I thought maybe a good way to start this session, rather than telling you what to do in terms of some activity, is just to sit for a moment and welcome yourself into yet another Zoom meeting and take a moment to check, well, is your body here? And if it is, how is it here? And move, breathe, stretch, anything that comes that seems appropriate. Just give yourself a couple of minutes to make that transition into being here in a more embodied way. Doesn't have to do anything, just sit with yourself if you're into meditation.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a matter of feeling, if it's possible and comfortable for you, just feeling your contact with the ground and noticing that the earth is always beneath us. We can count on that and feeling that support, and really just what does that feel like?
And noticing that difference between me just asking you to get on with it by yourself and then having Margot coming in and giving you a gentle instruction. Did that make a difference? There's, you know, when there's that relational aspect, when there's somebody giving you a suggestion, did that make a difference? It did to me. And what kind of things come up for you if you want to unmute yourself and join the conversation? What comes back to you when you bring your body into the conversation? Anyone want to kick off here?
I'm happy to share. So I definitely instantly wanted to move and get away. So there was a real awareness that I was ignoring the body and the stiffness of trying to sit here. And that what I really want to be doing is laying on the floor, listening rather than actually sat here. So that was quite an interesting thing to notice. when given the thing about the grounding, I have to say the language about the words and the earth and that, it was kind of, it was over there and I was hearing it, and that's all very nice, but I wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But when you did say what was the difference between what I did and what Margaret did, I thought, well, you gave us an instruction, Nick. It's just that I liked yours. My body wanted it. You said, welcome your body in. I was still given an instruction, something to do.
True.
But I just liked yours. So I'm not sure that's my sort of take on it. Is it just because that's what I wanted and needed to hear right now? Therefore, landing.
Yes, thanks, Cheryl. Absolutely. It's when we start to listen to the body, we have no idea what it's going to tell us necessarily. And anything, as we say in Clean, different from that, or maybe the same.
I'm going to lay down.
Please do. We were thinking of inviting you to do that later in the session, but you're ahead of the game. Yeah. Anything else?
I'm noticing from what Cheryl talked about, the two instructions, that when I'm paying attention to my body, things move more slowly. So that it wasn't so much that Margot's instruction was one I was less interested in. It was just that it came second, and it came quite soon after. And so my body was still processing the first instruction. So unless the second instruction is going to somehow, so the second instruction is always going to bring me out unless I can repel it. So I kind of first repelled it, and then I just got lost.
But Jeff, I think that's also a really great point about the slower, that the body responds more slowly than the social mind. And that's really useful to, you need time if you want to bring the body into the conversation. And plenty of people have been saying this morning about, the difficulty of getting clients or interviewees or whatever to answer clean questions. I think a little settling always helps clean questions to work. Any other responses from your embodied self to just being here in this room? Yes, Dorothy.
Hi, Nick. Yeah, well, I know that I feel it too. When I bring my attention to my body, to a part of my body, whether it's to my breath or my legs or whatever, I can calm myself down a lot more. And I know with public speaking, for example, to take a breath and bring my attention or my noticing to my tummy or to my feet or to a part of my body, take the energy away from the head, helps me calm, collected self, more poised, and then begin. So that slowing down, some kind of resonance happens, or I don't know the right word for it, but there's some kind of rebalancing.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of concerns if I'm worried or whatever, it's in my head and not in my body. So bringing the attention in the body.
Coming back.
Helps. Sorry?
I think we were just getting a bit of random noise there. Carry on. Okay, in your head and not in your body. Yeah. Ian, you're nodding. How's your body?
I totally empathise with what Doris has just said there. That's very similar to my experience too, in the sense of it slows down my whirring internal dialogue by placing attention on my breathing, which is obviously kind of meditative, or indeed, like we were doing the exercise earlier when we were moving the body around. And there's quite a difference for me when I'm in that state. So in that sense, it's very beneficial. Yeah.
And of course, in all kinds of corporate trainings and so on, you get people to move, you get people to do engaging and fun exercises with the body, and usually people are only too delighted to do that. What we're talking about is the delicate art of bringing the body into verbal conversations where there are difficult issues and where there are embodied aspects to those issues. It's not just a thing about thinking. And the themes that have been coming up about diversity and trauma are all very much relevant, I think, in this. If we want to have conversations in a polarized world, usually trauma is somewhere in there behind polarization, and we need to find ways to settle and be embodied together before we can even begin to think about having those kind of conversations usefully. Margot, anything you'd like to?
Yeah, thank you. That was so lovely. And I just want to thank those of you who spoke and those of you who didn't speak, because I'm sure you were having a conversation with yourself too. That was a lovely point that Cheryl made, and someone else too, Doris and two others, but I can't see everybody right now. Yeah, how interesting it is when we get invited to take our attentions to a specific place in the body. For some of us, that can be deeply relaxing because it does move our attention from our head into the body. Whereas for others, that's not really the place to go. So I think you all have found this, perhaps, I know I have. In working with clean language, sometimes I'm not sure what's the next question to ask. Where do I go from here? And I find that if I am listening internally to myself and to my own physical sense, I personally feel a sense of safety in doing that. And that opens up my mind, and the next question will just come. It'll be very natural to me. So there's less thinking involved. And it's almost like my body is speaking to me about where to go. The instinct I have, my gut instinct. And somebody even mentioned this in that 6-word chat, that clean language enables me to trust my gut. That ability to just tune in to myself really helps me work with my patient and my client. And I see some people nodding their heads, so it looks like a familiar experience. So we wanted to explore. Yes.
Sorry, can I just offer not a counter to that, but another aspect of that as well, is that what I found about feeling that sense of just intuitively knowing the next question actually comes not from tuning in to myself, but the metaphor I found is I entrain with my client. And I find that that feeling of entrainment comes from my repetition of their words, because I'm matching their emphasis. You know, I may be slowing down, but to some degree I have their pace. And it took me years to realize that's what I was really doing. And what brought it to my real awareness was when I'm working with a client, you know, I don't often hit that, oh my gosh, what am I going to ask next? But when I'm watching someone else facilitate, and even when I'm taking notes, like I would with a client, just to keep myself really focused, I find myself sitting there going, I don't know what I'd ask next. And then I realize I'm putting myself in trance too when I do that repetition. And so I don't think it's tapping into me. I think it's in training with the client in another way that leads to that sense of the next right question.
Well, thank you, Gina. You've been doing this for years anyway, and I know you do train quite a few mind-body therapists in your clean training.
I do, which is why I wanted to come to this. I'm not one myself, but
delighted that you're here. And that question is exactly it, I think. One of the reasons I wanted to explore this with everyone is the idea in clean is that we're keeping that space completely clean for the client. And at the same time, as any psychotherapist, you know, all psychotherapy traditions include the sense that we create a field, some kind of field of awareness. And as you're trying to be really clean, at the same time, stuff is popping into your mind and you know it's not your stuff. So it's like this field that we create, the entrainment, the co-regulation. There's all kinds of words in the general field now for this. Intersubjectivity, Thich Nhat Hanh has interbeing. Ian McGilchrist, who wrote a wonderful book about the two sides of the brain, talks about betweenness. What's the other one? Biopsychosocial beings, recognizing that we are biopsychosocial beings. You know, we can entrain at all these different levels. And it just brings me back to David Grove's wonderful expression of, you know, when you're really, the real aim of clean is that the I of the therapist should disappear. The sense of the therapist as a person should disappear. Which raises the question, when the I of you as a therapist disappears, then what is still there? What is still you? And for me, that's a lovely step towards more kind of Eastern sense of who we are and what we are. And I just wanted to, if I can screen share this with you. Here we go. Everybody seeing, should be seeing.
Not yet.
Let's see if it works. Oh, no, it's still coming up. There you go. This Chinese character, have you got that on your screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So the bottom line for Confucius, when he was figuring out his way that people should get on with each other, was the idea that a person is not an individual. The Confucian concept is that a person is essentially a social being. So here on this side, you see the basic character for a person, a human. And here is just simply the character for two. So right there at the very core of the Confucian idea of being human is, yeah, you're a person, but there's two. You're not a person until there's another person. And I think that's a good enough place to start from. Any comments on that, Margot?
Oh no, I'm curious to hear others' comments.
Yeah, but it's radical, and it's one reason why there's, you know, such a cultural divide between the West and the East. This very radical, different idea.
I could start off, I don't know, throw in something to the conversation. You sort of referring to David Grove and when the I disappears, what's still there, which is such an interesting statement. I hadn't heard that before. But I would say, well, when the I disappears to whom? So when I read that sentence, I'm thinking from the client's point of view, the facilitator disappears. I love it when a client says to me, because often, you know, clients will close their eyes in a session. Mm-hmm. And I love it afterwards. They'll say, oh, I kind of forgot you were there. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, you know, because when you're both basically repeating a person's words back to them, it just feels like they're kind of in their own experience. But I don't think I ever disappear myself from the facilitation. I might like to think I do, but, you know, I don't think I do. And one of the lovely cues I get for that is if something the client says surprises me. Mm. And that's a reminder to me that I'd made an assumption about what the answer might be. So if I'm surprised, clearly I'm still present. You know, the difference is I don't share that. So I try to remove the I, but I don't think I get away from it. I think I'm still part of that. That relationship is there, that space, that field we create. I'm still there. But so I think it's when the I disappears to whom?
Well, Margot might want to say something. My quick reaction would be that yes, I am still there as the practitioner, the facilitator, and it's very important that I'm there. And if you just, you know, look at all the faces on the screen right now and think, would it be exactly the same experience to be, you know, facilitated cleanly by each of these different people? And you will immediately be getting intuitive senses of, well, maybe not that person. Or, yeah, that would be a great person. It's, you know, there's so much already there in who you are. You can't get rid of it. But that's one reason why Clean is such a fantastic, at least verbally, we are creating a cleaner space, a clearer space. Margot, any?
Yeah.
Yes,
Gina,
Meg.
I think you hit the nail on the head there when you said, I'm still present. And that, to me, that's the key. If I move myself, if I take the I out of being here, then what I tune into is a presence, that field of being with another person. So that was beautiful. Thank you for saying that. Heather, did you want to say something? Or I heard somebody else's voice.
Yeah, I'd like to say something. I really appreciated the Chinese character, Nick, that you shared of the human as a social being, and I had a sense that not only are we is the idea of being witnessed something that's so vital to helping us have our sense of being, and that's such a core element of clean language to me, is that we help to witness people into their own sense of being. So that was an association with the two-ness. But the other association I had was linked to your invitation, Nick, at the beginning, to sort of do what we needed to do physically to bring our body to the conversation. And that Chinese character of the mind and the body, as if there's a dualism, but that when we have both of those parts there, that we're actually so much more present. And then I loved what you were saying, Gina, about the I of the therapist and what happens to you when you're facilitating. And I was thinking, I wonder if, for me, the I that disappears is the ego, but the eyes, i.e. the physical part of my being, is so highly attuned, even though we're not maintaining eye contact. So there's a whole load of processing to unpack there, but I think there's something about the difference between this ego and the head and the eyes and what we see and the idea of witnessing that this conversation is bringing up for me.
Okay.
Yes, Nick.
Sorry,
I got in a little late.
I know.
So when you were quoting David Grove, when the eye of the therapist disappears, and when I heard him say that sentence, he said, the I of the therapist cease to exist.
Yeah.
Because if it disappear, my question would have been, disappear where? You see?
Yeah, cease to exist.
To exist is even more radical.
Yeah. And even more Zen, if you like.
Yes.
And Kay, you have said, how important is the body of the facilitator for the client, other than just the words? In other words, the tone of voice and all of those aspects, the embodied aspects of voice and presence. And Claudia, I'd love to see examples of how you bring it into a conversation with a team you might be working with. What a wonderful cue. I think, Margot, let's just, if we go straight into this main practice that we wanted to share with you. And really, that's a good way to begin to answer, Claudia, your question. Where are you on the screen, Claudia? There you are, okay. Thank you for that. So Margot, Margot.
Nick, I also just want to give a shout out to Kay, who also wrote how important is the body of the facilitator for the client, other than just words and tone of voice. So I think we'll experience that, perhaps. Yes,
absolutely. And so this is a group practice. We don't have to go into breakout rooms for this. And that's the whole point of it. And just to briefly introduce it, and then we'll spend about 10 minutes in the actual practice. And then some feedback time and come back into the conversation. So this is actually called contemplative group dynamics. And I run a group here in London, in England, for mindfulness professional people who are using mindfulness professionally one way or another. And we have presentations from different people. And this was a presentation given by Lawrence Ladden, who is a clinical psychologist and an expert on group dynamics. He's also been a meditator for about 40 years. He's really experienced on both sides, like I said, the clinical and the mindful sides of things. And he was just curious about, why does meditation have to be silent? And why does it have to be just an individual experience? Even when you meditate in a group of 2,000 people with some great teacher at the front, it's still an individual experience. What would it be like if we could bring language gently into the process so that it's like we can share what's happening internally with the whole group? And that's what we're going to try right now. So Margot, would you just like to explain a little bit about how it works?
Yeah, so one way to explore this is simply just to begin. When I work with patients or my movement students, I do invite them to just tune in and recognize that the ground is beneath them. So I'm going to invite you to do that, but I also encourage you just to notice how that is to be invited to that, just to feel, is it possible for you? Is it comfortable? What's the response that you have when I invite you to direct your attention to your contact with the ground? If you're sitting on the floor, that might be direct. If you're sitting in a chair, then it's the contact perhaps that your feet have with the ground and that your seat has with the chair.
And as you're doing that, Margot, sorry to interrupt you, I notice a lot more people are coming in. And just wanted to sort of say this is a meditative practice. And at the same time, we're in a Metaphorum where people can come and go. So just respecting the experience that people who want to stay with it are having. And so Margot will start us off just allowing us a little time to transition into a more embodied sense of awareness of self. And then after a couple of minutes of just silently allowing yourself to do that, all we do is incredibly simple, is begin to put into a few simple words what your actual physical sensations are in the moment. And it's just physical sensations. If you notice you're feeling a bit anxious about the process, it's not about saying I'm feeling anxious. It's just about, in a way, it's using that clean question of whereabouts is that anxious. You just say what you're feeling in your body. So, if I start off, I might just say, I'm feeling the warmth of my hands resting on my thighs. It's these incredibly simple things. And then as we start going, it's fine to have moments of silence where nobody says anything. It's also important that everybody contributes something at some point, just to say what's happening for your body, because what actually starts to happen is that our embodied selves begin to listen to each other in a very different way from the normal kind of conversation. So just before Margot takes us into that, are there any questions or moments of anxiety? Are we ready to go into a trip into the embodied self? Okay, Margot, over to you.
Thank you. So yeah, for those of you who are just joining us, welcome. We're glad you're here. So again, you check in with yourself how it is when I invite you to just let your attention come to your contact with the ground. And again, it might be through the soles of your feet. It might be through a chair you're sitting on. You may just be feeling the ground if you're sitting on the floor. And just noticing, again, that sense of pressure or contact or support, if that is okay for you to let your attention go there. And you can notice that you are breathing. I think that's a safe assumption for me to make. At some level, in some way, we're all breathing. So just noticing that for you. And then simply just beginning, just giving a name to what sensation you might be feeling and the location of that. So for example, I'm aware and noticing the pressure of my eyeglasses on the bridge of my nose.
And as soon as Margot says that, of course, it draws my attention to the pressure of my glasses on the bridge of my nose, which I was not aware of before, but yes, I'm aware of something. A sense of the weight of the glasses on the bridge of my nose. And when you're ready, just say whatever you're aware of.
I'm aware of the feeling of the cold, hard floor beneath my feet.
I'm aware of pressure at the back of my legs.
I am aware my shoulders are very tight.
I'm aware of.
Go ahead, Ian.
I'm aware of the tension in my jaw, which is just starting to relax a little.
I am aware of a draft in my back.
I'm aware of a pleasant heaviness in where I sit.
I'm aware of very heavy arms and very heavy legs.
I'm aware of the temperature of my in-breath in my nose.
When Bronwyn said temperature, I immediately felt a coolness under my knee.
I'm aware of a squeezing pressure from my headphones on my ears.
I'm aware of the layers under my feet.
I'm aware of my foot against the desk, pushing against the desk, and just a bit of pressure.
I'm aware of how cold my feet are.
I'm aware of tension in my shoulders and neck.
I'm aware of tension in my hair where it's tied back.
Aware of my fringe getting in my eyes.
I'm aware of the weight of my left elbow on the desk.
I'm aware of cool air wherever my bare skin is exposed.
I'm aware of my glasses sitting on the bridge of my nose.
I'm aware of an expanding feeling in my chest. That's also tingly.
I'm aware of the touch of the fabric of my shirt on my shoulders.
I'm aware of a deeper breath.
I'm aware of the weight of my head. It's heavy.
Maybe a couple more.
I'm aware of a cracking sensation in my neck due to my head on my shoulders.
I'm aware of my body relaxing.
Yes, so just to pause for a moment and stay with what's happening. It's like phase one is just the simple, pure awareness of physical sensations. And then as one brings the body into conversation, you begin to notice it responds. There's maybe a sense of relaxing or a deeper breath, or maybe not, but let's take a couple more minutes just to sort of move into that phase two of, well, what happens next as you bring the attention to your embodied self with a group of other embodied selves.
I'm aware of my breath deepening.
Where my lungs want more space.
I'm aware of trying to keep myself awake. Quite, so I start snoring, let me know.
I'm aware of the shell of my body feeling very heavy, but on the inside, it's feeling very effervescent and light and expansive.
And noticing how we sort of rest in silence. And what is this silence like for you?
Sensation when you suddenly spoke then, in a not suddenly for me, it was quite, it brought back quite a trauma kind of sensation through my whole body. And I've noticed that recently, even with meditations, if they go quiet for a length of time and then suddenly speak, it's sort of, there's a shock kind of feeling.
And of course, that is, if I was doing something like this with a client, that is where I would ask permission to begin to ask some more clean questions about that. That would be it's like your body is offering that, and it's a familiar thing for you. Once it feels it's having some attention paid, then yeah, that comes up. Thank you, Cheryl. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And so we have another 10 minutes for our session. So let's just take a breath, gently transition, bringing this quality of being together in a more embodied way back into our conversation, just to come back to the conversation and have 10 minutes to share all the things we were discussing before. And what was that experience like for you? What's it like to transition from that silence, and what that silence was like, back into the Zoom room and all the faces on the screen, but maybe with a bit more sense of yourself in an embodied way? Who would like to kick off?
I don't mind, Chap.
Sorry, Scott, did you put your hand up? No. Okay, so go ahead, whoever was speaking.
The thing that's come up that's really resonating was this about, you said something at the very beginning about being safe to go in your body. So I've realized that I probably just don't, I have some kind of, that I've been doing it for years, not allowing that to happen. And I know why, but it was just, so that's just I've not always felt connected, and I suspect it's because I haven't allowed that part to happen for the other reasons. So that's quite yeah, and making connection of all those little shocks that I get with certain kinds of change of tone in the body makes a lot of sense of a lot of other things that I haven't been able to connect with linguistically.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Haven't been able to connect with linguistically. Yeah, even with clean language, you mean?
Так, ну что, собрались?
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, so who would like to share something? Yeah.
I will speak now. I see this would be a really good way to synchronize or create rapport in Zoom as a way of an embodied conversation with someone on the other side. That's getting to a nonverbal presence with somebody electronically is part of the missing experience of online conversations.
Игрушки бы хорошо было бы
10
собрать.
minutes
Sorry, Scott. If anybody's getting some Russians coming through, you could mute yourself. Yeah, sorry. Go on, Scott.
Can I just interrupt, Nick, so that Scott doesn't get interrupted again? Since you're the host of the meeting, could you mute Anna Sergieva? I think that is where the sound is coming from.
Let me see if I can.
Sorry, Scott. We'll get back to you in just a moment. Thank you, Anna.
Okay. Muted.
Yes, Scott.
Yeah.
So I might use this in order to, and possibly as a group,
yes,
in order to get everyone tuned in and synchronized both with their bodies and with this set of little pictures that are on the Zoom screen. So everyone is in the same spot before our conversation starts.
Absolutely.
So
when me and Margot do online trainings, we do begin or bring this in fairly early on, because people suddenly realize, hey, there's a different way of being together here in a Zoom room. Thanks, Scott. Anything else there? What was your experience? Yes, John?
I think coming back's a bit like waking up. There's a brightness to it, and you're kind of coming back, and you're sort of coming back slowly, and there's light from it. So that was the thing I noticed. The other thing I noticed is the feelings I feel. I'm feeling my body, and I've explored in conversations in the past. There's similar metaphors. There's similar, or not metaphors, but there's similar embodied things that connect to things from my past. And it's important stuff that I've not always talked and worked with, but it's interesting. The same feelings come up, and it's things I need to think about, or not think about, but be present with. And it's a good experience to connect back with yourself and understand yourself and why you are, and remind yourself. But yeah, it was very good, and it was nice to come through it and come out of it at the other end and come out gently.
Thanks, John. Yeah, there is definitely that sense of going through something and coming out the other end. Yeah. Dominique?
Yeah, that connected me to the notion of container. And actually, at the end of the exercise, I felt incredibly exhausted, tired, and sad, which is something I was not connected to before when I started a few minutes ago. And it really matters, because actually I feel like this, and I am more rooted in the exercise, in the room. And as a professional, it's great to experience this and know where do I start from when I do coach someone else. So as a trainer of other coaches, I will use that exercise, definitely, to become aware of what is it, the container, because I teach about it, but I don't really have such a strong exercise to practice actually, to really get into it. It's very powerful.
Margot, any comment?
Yeah, I just want to respond to that. And I see, Naomi, you have something you want to add, so we'll come to you next. Dominique, that made me think of in the Tao Te Ching, which is a Taoist text, y'all may be familiar with it. In the 11th chapter, it says that we form clay into a pot, but it's the empty space within that makes it useful. And that silence at the end of our process together was so profound for me, and it echoed what Heather and Gina and now I don't see who it was, David Grove's quote, "When the I ceases to exist." To me, that silence is the silent witness that we can embody with our clients and our patients. And that's very powerful to me. So thank you.
Thanks, Maura. Well, we need to finish quite soon. Ronald, would you mind if I just ask you, since you did something on focusing and clean earlier, what where you're at in this conversation about clean and embodiment.
Nick, can I interrupt you just because I invited Naomi to...
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Sorry, so sorry.
If you can hold for a sec. Naomi, where are you?
Thank you. I'll try to be quick because I was very surprised after the I ceased to exist, because I was feeling a draft into my back. And in fact, it made me realize that the I taking care of myself, which I am not very good at in my everyday life, was there inside me and kind of talking to me to look after myself in the basic, because what was a draft, I mean, I could get a code. So that was very interesting and surprising. Thank you.
Thanks, Naomi. Yeah, Ronald, any words from you before we finish?
As I entered the group, I was still very tired from my own presentation this morning, and I felt very much outside the group as a loner, and along the exercise, I started to come in more and more into the group, and I really feel a member of the group now. That has changed a lot.
Thanks. I think that's a lovely place to end that. That is usually what happens with a process like this, because as we come more into our bodies, we connect more with that Confucian idea that, you know, a single embodied self doesn't really make sense. It's much easier to connect with the sense of the other person, the group, when you begin to become more embodied. So I'd just like to say a big thank you. And Margot, any final word from you?
Oh, well, I just, there's much in the chat to respond to, Nick. And I just want to make sure people know that we are going to be looking at that. And I don't know how to respond.
Can I suggest, Margot, that if you want to respond, pop something into the notes for this room on the, that's a good place to if people come back to this blue room, that'd be a great place to put anything.
Thank you, Ian.
And Claudia, you've asked, is there a phase 3 to the process? The way that Lawrence Ladden teaches it, he uses the Buddhist psychology structure of physical sensations, then whether they're pleasant or unpleasant, then whether you're drawn to them or there's a aversion from them, and then a fourth level of whatever's going on, thoughts, emotions, and so on. He uses that Buddhist psychology structure, but we were really just staying with the physical sensations.
So Nick, do we have 5 more minutes?
No, we're supposed to finish now.
I'm going to love you.
A little break.
Thank you so much.
Everyone needs a break, but thanks very much for coming.
Thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
So good to meet you.
Thank
Lovely
you.
to see you. Thank you for all you shared.